The apartment was silent, except for the distant sound of the city breathing outside. Andrius closed the bathroom door and turned on the faucet, letting the water run over his fingers before bringing his hands to his face. The engagement celebration had been perfect. At least, that's what everyone said. Olivia glowed in her navy blue dress, champagne flutes were raised in toasts, and smiles were polite. He'd done everything right, everything expected of him. But something was bothering him. He looked up at the mirror. Water trickled between his eyebrows and down the firm line of his jaw, but that wasn't what was making him uneasy. It was the feeling that something was out of place inside him, as if he were outside his own body, playing a role. And then the memory came. The college party. The music muffled by the crowded bar. The heat of dancing bodies, laughter. The smell of beer mixed with cheap perfume. And Tom, with his mischievous smile and his eyes shining in the dim light. He had pulled him by the hand to a darker corner, away from prying eyes. "Listen to me," he had said, holding the 2 plastic cups between his fingers. "I don't want to marry anyone else. Only you." Andrius remembered the laugh he had given back then. "You're drunk." "I'm not." Tom dropped the cups on the floor and took a thin, soft purple ribbon from his pocket. He gently held Andrius's wrist, as if touching something sacred, and tied the ribbon there. Then he did the same to his own wrist. "We're connected now," he whispered, looking into his eyes. "Promise that, no matter what happens, you'll remember this?" And then Tom kissed him. In the bathroom mirror, Andrius saw the reflection of that kiss, as if it were happening right there, in that instant. He tasted youth, freedom, the illusion that the world was theirs. But the world wasn't. The world ripped Tom from his arms that very night. The phone rang in the early hours. The hospital. The accident. The unrecognizable body. The purple ribbon, stained with blood, still tied around Tom's wrist when Andrius last saw him. The pain returned like a blade slicing through his chest. Andrius took a deep breath, but couldn't hold back the tears that began to fall silently. He braced his hands on the sink, his shoulders trembling slightly. In the next room, Olivia slept peacefully. The engagement ring gleamed on her finger, the symbol of a stable, correct, secure future. But Andrius knew the truth. Part of him was still stuck in that night, that promise, that purple ribbon. And nothing he could do could change that. The first day, the staff room was silent, filled only with the faint hum of the coffee maker in the background. The strong smell of coffee mingled with the woody aroma of antique furniture, giving the room an air of seriousness and tradition. Andrius sat at his desk, reviewing notes for his next class, but his mind was scattered. The previous night still weighed heavily on him. The past never gave him rest. He ran a hand over his face, trying to shake off that strange feeling. There was something in the air, an uneasiness he couldn't name. And then the door opened. Andrius looked up reflexively, ready to ignore whoever it was. But when he saw the young man entering, his body froze. Time stood still. It was like seeing a ghost. The young man was thin, wore thin-framed glasses, carried a notebook clutched to his chest, and looked around with the hesitation of someone treading unfamiliar territory. His slightly wavy brown hair fell over his forehead, and there was something about him, the way his restless eyes scanned the room, his unsteady posture, that made Andrius feel as if the ground had dropped away for a second. It was Tom. No, it couldn't be. Tom was dead. And yet there was that young man, alive, breathing, real. The similarities were unsettling. The same physique. The same way he bit his lips slightly when nervous. Only the glasses and the withdrawn posture set him apart. "Excuse me." The young man's voice broke the silence. He looked at Andrius hesitantly, unsure if he was interrupting something. Andrius blinked a few times, feeling his chest tighten. His mind was fighting against reality. "You must be Thomás Brand," he said, coldly controlling his expression. The young man nodded quickly. "Yes, sir. It's a pleasure to meet you, Professor Hawthorne." Hawthorne. Not Andrius. Not anymore. The professor stood slowly, still trying to recover from the shock. He forced himself to take a deep breath and extended his hand. Welcome. I hope you came prepared. I do not tolerate incompetence. Thomás blinked, surprised by the cold reception, and shook his hand with a bit of hesitation. Andrius felt his skin warm against his. For an instant, a memory flashed. Tom, holding his hand in the middle of the party, the purple ribbon tied around his wrists. He released Thomás quickly, as if he'd touched fire. The young man looked away, clearly uncomfortable. I am ready to learn, Thomás replied, trying to keep his voice steady, though his insecurity was evident. Andrius simply nodded, remaining impassive. But inside him, something was beginning to break. Silence hung in the staff room as Andrius gathered his books to leave. He tried to ignore Thomás's presence beside him, but the resemblance to Tom still bothered him. His chest felt tight, his mind in conflict. It was irrational. It made no sense. He gripped one of the literature books tightly, but just as he pulled another from the stack, a smaller volume slipped from his hands and fell to the floor with a thud. A book of poetry by John Keats. Andrius instinctively bent down to pick it up, but at the same moment, Thomás did the same. And then their hands touched. It was an involuntary gesture. Thomás's skin was warm against his, the slight shock of the unexpected contact. But what truly made Andrius freeze was the instant their gazes met. Thomás's eyes were brown, slightly golden in the light streaming in through the window. Unsure, curious, but filled with something Andrius didn't want to name. For a moment, no one moved. The air seemed dense, heavy. Andrius felt his heart pound, his body stiff. The sensation was like an old memory, something that should have been left in the past but was resurfacing without permission. Thomás was the first to look away, quickly withdrawing his hand and handing the book to Andrius. "Here," he said, his voice low, almost a whisper. Thank you so much for watching this far. If you enjoyed it, please like, share, and subscribe to the channel for more episodes.